Oscar kicking and screaming from his home, and they brought him to the old Alton Bridge, where they had a noose ready and waiting for him. They put it around his neck and flung him over the side of the bridge. However, when they went down by the water to inspect the body and make sure that he was in fact dead, they were surprised to discover an empty noose that had not broken and had not been tampered with and was still rather tight, as he would not have been able to slip through it. And although they searched for his body, nobody could seem to locate it.
Okay. I'm in.
Are you so freaky for fall right now?
I'm actually so freaky for the fact that you opened my beer for me. Thank you, Ty.
You're welcome. Even though the noose had not been tampered with, it wasn't broken, it was tight, they were still pretty much convinced that he had escaped somehow, because otherwise, where would the body be?
Okay.
So they went back to Oscar's home where his wife and children were, and I've read differing things on this. Some people say in the story that they butchered his family, like they mutilated them.
I knew that was going to be part of it.
Some people say that they hung them, but most of the stories say that they lit the house on fire while his family was still inside.
Oh, fuck you if you don't think that people should be equal. Fuck you.
For real.
Anyway.
The Klansmen thought that he would either come out of the woodwork to try to save his family, but even if he didn't, they would still get their revenge at the end of the day by killing his wife and children.
Fucking monstrosity.
It's horrifying. And then there's another way less popular version of the story that I don't think is the legit one, but for the sake of sharing it, we'll share it.
Okay. Is it that he reunited with his family and they went to live on like a fucking cloud somewhere and weren't afflicted by horrible pain?
Yes, that's it.
Okay,
That's
great.
it.
Great, perfect.
They moved to Ireland.
Oh man, I love Ireland.
They ate scones for the rest of their life.
I don't love scones.
There was no racism involved, and everybody was just like, "Oh my god, that's so great that you know how to do the milk and cheese thing because we're so into that here." The other version of the story actually predates the construction of the bridge.
Okay.
So this story says that at some point in the 1860s, some Copper Canyon cowboys had lynched a Creole slave goat herder named Jack Kendall from a tall creekside tree, which was located near where the bridge now stands. Unfortunately, the hanging was botched, according to the story.
Okay.
As they had never hanged anybody before. And I'm thinking that the tree that they had hung him from was like very tall, or maybe he was a larger man or something, because they say that the head had ripped from the body.
I told you about the guy. Wait, did we leave it in one of the episodes? The guy that had argued successfully? Yeah.
Because he gained all the weight.
Because he gained like 200 pounds or something, and so he was like 400 pounds, and they said it was cruel and unusual punishment because his head we ripped from his body.
Yes.
That's really fucking awful.
Yeah, so whatever happened, his head had ripped from the body, and the cowboys then watched in horror as the headless body raised itself from the mud.
Oh.
Supposedly. This is where it gets a little weird. Animated by voodoo. And then it ripped off the head of a nearby goat to replace its own head still trapped in the noose.
Okay. So yeah, no, I see.
Are you with the other story more now?
I'm way with the other story.
One of the oldest legends says that if travelers were to cross the bridge at night with their headlights off, they would meet the goat man on the other side of the bridge, which obviously comes from a time when the bridge was still in use and cars were able to pass over it.
Right.
In the past, numerous stories have circulated about people finding cars on or near the bridge with the occupants of the cars missing. So local legend says that if you knock on the bridge 3 times at midnight or back in the day, turn your headlights off and honk 3 times, it will summon the goat man. You'll know he's around at first because of the smell of rotting flesh, and that smell will apparently grow stronger as he draws nearer.
I would want to walk that, just a random, even if it were not closed.
Well, now you have to walk it.
Say you can drive your car across, I feel like I'd be better walking it. I feel like I'd be more, if I were going for that specific purpose, I would walk it. I would if it was something I was into. For some reason, for me, this is just a hard pass. I don't want to visit this place. I mean, I don't particularly like goats, but goat men are pretty much fun stuff in my planet.
Yeah, and we talk about this sometimes. I like people for the most part, so I'm okay with ghosts. I'm not such a fan of non-human things or demonic entities.
Right,
demonic entity for me is a hard pass.
Yeah, but you don't know. Maybe they're like a nice one.
So numerous reports tell of red glowing eyes that appear from the darkness.
Which you hate.
I I do, actually. That's one of my very least favorite things.
Glowing eyes and shadow people.
And the paranormal. If there's a shadow person, if there's a demon, if there are red glowing eyes of any shape or form, it's such a hard pass for me. So that's why I just don't want to go here.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's wonderful.
Some people also claim to have seen what appears to be a large, snarling, goat-headed man moving through the woods or on the bridge carrying the heads of either goats or humans in his hands. So visitors often report hearing strange noises that include the sounds of hooves moving towards them on the bridge, splashing in the creek below, or sinister laughter. One of the most commonly reported sounds that people hear is an inhuman growling.
Okay.
That comes from either beside them, if they're on the bridge, or sometimes they can hear it emanating from the woods. I actually, and this is not in my notes, but I was reading about different people's experiences that had gone there. One woman said that she was with two of her friends and her boyfriend. Her and her boyfriend had been walking behind her other two friends, and they were going across the bridge. And she felt breathing on the back of her neck, and she thought that it was her boyfriend, like, fucking with her. So she reached her hand up and kind of swatted to get at him, to just be like, hey, stop messing with me.
Right.
But her hand didn't make contact with anything, and when she turned around, he apparently was several yards behind her.
That's outstanding.
There's another story about the bridge that I'm kind of iffy on, and I'm interested to hear what you think about it because you know more about this particular entity than I do.
Okay.
This story says that there's a spirit of a woman who wanders in search of her lost baby. Some people think that it is the spirit of La Llorona, who is apparently known to haunt the rivers of the Southwest.
There's a couple different thoughts on her because I'm not cool and I can't say her name correctly, but I know what it is correctly. Most of the time it's that she had drowned her kids.
Her two children.
Correct.
Yes.
I feel like I've read that for a couple of different bridges and areas that I've looked at. Mm-hmm. But it also seems to be like another white lady sort of commentary.
That's like why I said, I'm like, this story is a little bit iffy, but it is a local story, so I figured I would just include it, take it for what it is. Believe
yeah, absolutely.
Don't,
everyone has white ladies, and a lot of white ladies are spawned via either being killed by their husbands or whatever, or they are looking for their child.
This is kind of how I stumbled across this story, because I was looking for fun Halloween hauntings, things that are extra active around Halloween, and that's apparently one of the big things about this bridge is that if you go there on Halloween, it's extra super duper active. But I imagine that if you go there on Halloween, there's going to be a bajillion people.
9,000 people all trying to knock at midnight.
So, of course, Ghost Adventures had to go there.
Of course they did.
I am actually really happy that I watched the episode because it was a really, really good episode. It was so interesting. And on top of just seeing the experiences that they had, they mentioned some pretty interesting information that I did not initially see online in the different articles and blogs that I was reading.
Okay.
So if you want to check the episode out, it is season 13, episode 13. So the first thing that they pointed out, which I had never heard of, so I went down a little bit of a weird wormhole with this, is about the pentagram of blood. This is apparently a map of tragedies that have happened among ley lines in North America.
Okay.
And the points of the tragedies apparently form an enclosed pentagram across the North American continent. And the lines of the pentagram in one part of it apparently run through the location of Goatman's Bridge. There was a whole wealth of information out there about it, and I could not read every single article on it because that's a story for a different day. I personally would like to read more about it.
I agree.
Like I said,
also want to.
It was one of those things where it's like, okay, listen, Ty, like you have a story that we are already doing
you're not
research
me.
on. We're not going to go and do like a whole nother story.
Yeah, you're not me.
So while the Ghost Adventures crew was interviewing locals, some people had mentioned that there were satanic rituals that they had known to be taking place within the woods and on the bridge. They also said that several times that they had gone and visited, they had found the remains of sacrificed animals. So the interviewed women also had mentioned being physically attacked and being left with the token demonic 3 red claw marks on their bodies. One woman actually had a photo of the claw marks on her, but these 3 people did not know each other, and they all had said the same thing, that they had been left with claw marks.
Okay, but I feel like that is a very well-known trope.
Aaron, who is the cast member, he's like the bald guy, and I feel so bad for him because they always send him into the worst situations. Like I feel like He's like the Toby from the Romy and Michelle of the group. They're always just like, fuck off, Toby. And they put him in the worst situations, and I feel so bad for him.
I need you to not reference Toby anymore unless you want me to laugh a lot.
Laugh as much as you want. I'm keeping that one in. So Aaron was knocked backwards by something that he claimed was kind of like a dark mass, and it had passed through him. He felt it pass through his body, but they all ran over to his location to check it out. And his infrared light and where his camera and body had landed were several feet apart from each other.
Oh, okay.
And this is really actually super fucked up. This is maybe my favorite part of the story that makes me not happy about it. The Ghost Adventures crew had a still photographer for several years, and her name is Ashley. She is married to Jay Wassley. He's part of the crew.
Oh, heard, okay.
So she was their still photographer for several years, and she actually had to quit the show after this episode.
Okay.
And she is not a person who was part of the crew that was on camera frequently, because she was more of like in the background taking photos of things that they would analyze later. So she had kind of a meltdown the day that they went there to check it out, and they were interviewing the people, the locals rather, that had been there and were sharing their experiences. So they halted the interview and they went over and they were like, what's going on with you? She was crying. She was shaking.
Was this before or after they had gone to the bridge?
They were near the bridge. They were like just on the edge of it.
But they hadn't already done the investigation. They just were talking to locals before.
This was not during the nighttime investigation. This was during the daytime while they were interviewing the locals. So she was really shaken up by it. She admitted to them. She was like, I've never felt like this before. I have no reason to feel like this, but I want to hurt all of you right now. I just want to attack you all. So that night when they did the investigation, they had talked to her about whether or not she wanted to confront whatever it was that had made her feel that way. Okay. And she was like, yeah, I'm not happy about what happened. I would like to do that. So they gave her the camera and they gave her the lights, and they were like, okay, don't go too far from the trailer. We're going to be right here watching the footage. She goes out there, she confronts it. She's really angry, and she's just like, why would you do that to me? What's your problem? And it gets caught on the audio from her camera. Something very, very loudly growls at her. And after that, she sees a light anomaly that she does not see through the camera. She spots it with her naked eye, but it shows up on the camera in the woods. And then after that, they decide that because she's acting really weird and because she's so angry, they want to get a little bit closer to her and come out of the trailer. So they've got their infrared cameras and they're watching her from a little bit of a distance. And she gets hit by something and gets knocked to the ground.
But they didn't see what the something was.
No, you can't see what it is that hits her. So they return her to the bus. They're checking her out. She has a red welt on the side of her face that they show on camera where she's been hit in the face by something really hard.
Oh, super.
Apparently, something after they had filmed this episode had attached to her and followed her back home from the location. And it was so traumatic for her that after this episode, she told them she had to quit the show and she wanted nothing to do with it anymore.
I can see that, man.
It's just, no thank you. So during their interviews with the locals, 3 separate people all had claimed that they had communicated with an entity that identified itself with the name Steve. And after conducting a ritual and casting a circle with a spirit box session beneath the bridge near the creek, they had a voice respond to them through the spirit box. When they asked its name, it said its name was Steve, which confirmed the 3 locals that had told them they had encountered a Steve.
Right.
A lot of people theorize that Steve may actually be one of the former KKK Grand Wizards from way back in the day, because they've looked at some of the names and it seems to line up.
Okay, well, fuck that motherfucker. Also, no wonder he has a problem with women and also humans.
Yeah, and there was also a part where they ask him, are you happy about what happened here and what is still happening to people when they visit this place?
And he was like, yeah.
Exactly.
Of course he was.
He said, I might be.
Ugh. Don't fucking toy with me, you dummy.
It was something to the effect of I might be. Obviously, watch the episode. I've been drinking gin. That's not in my notes, but I kind of remember it. I just watched it. So I also went ahead and checked out different people's accounts on their personal blogs about ways that they had encountered things either on the bridge or in the woods near it. One blog that I read had a gentleman who'd said him and his friend went to go visit it. They heard noises in the woods around them the entire time that they were walking, but he wasn't super concerned about it until he was being physically touched by something that he couldn't see.
Okay.
The most upsetting part about his account, though, is when he talks about feeling like something followed him home. These are his exact words. This is a quote from his blog. He says, "I got home, and later that night I went to bed pretty late. I think it was about 3 a.m. if I recall. I fell asleep pretty easily, but I got woken up wide